This is my mum, this is Japan, and this is a Hasselblad. Why Japan? Well, it's always been my mum's dream to come and visit. Why Hasselblad? They've reached out and said we can provide an X2D for your trip if you wish. Now, I've never used a medium format camera before, so I figured why not? I need to be transparent with you now, and it's quite important. So they've given me this camera in exchange for a video, and I can keep this camera at the end of the video and at the end of this deal. They didn't pay me any money, nor did they pay for any part of this trip because it was already happening. So with that regard, or in that regard, sorry, this video is sponsored by Hasselblad. They didn't stipulate anything I had to say in particular, nor did they say make this type of video or do this. It's basically an open book that said do whatever you normally do, just use our camera instead of what you normally use and share some thoughts as you go along. The only thing they've specifically requested is if I have any real bad criticisms or if there's something I just really don't like about the camera, before making it public, to just check with them to make sure that I'm not doing anything wrong. And if it is a genuine criticism and I'm not doing anything wrong, it gives them a chance to provide their answer to what I have to say in order to then say that to you as well, so you can understand. So the whole circle is kind of completed. Now, I would understand why some people might now think I can't trust a word you're saying because I got a free camera, and I completely respect that. I completely understand that. If you do trust what I'm saying, then thank you, I appreciate it. But again, if you don't trust what I'm saying now because of this, I completely understand. On a cloudy, gloomy, and even rainy day like this, Ginza is a great place to shoot because there's a lot of reflections and you can really utilize them. Also, because of the tall buildings, you can shoot from a dark area into a lighter area and create that contrast that you otherwise would lack on an overcast day like this. I still believe the sun will pop out later, and when it does, we'll pop over to Tsukiji Market because on a sunny day it's really cool over there. But for now, we'll hang around Ginza, see if I can do something with reflections, or I don't know. It's a first day, I'm not too bothered about getting anything particularly worthy, but we'll see, you never know. So I don't actually plan on coming back here, and I need to get a shot. As you can see right now, if I turn the camera around, it's very flat. There's a lot going on there, there's loads of people, there's loads of noise. You're not really going to get a good shot, so you need to think slightly outside of the box. So right in front of me is this metal thing, and then underneath is a piece of glass. So if we can use these elements to try and create some kind of an abstract photo and have a subject or a person walking through. So to do that, I'll take the camera, and you could see I will pre-focus on the back and then reposition it to create something abstract like this. So I'll stand here for a bit, play around with these compositions and see if I can get something interesting. Well, the weather has turned and everything's a bit wet, which is a good weather sealing test for this camera. So far it's working. Not much photography is happening at the moment. So in front of me is a shop and I'm just waiting for my mum at the moment. However, there's these two silver things that the guys put out because it's about to rain, and when he was putting that out, I mean, it looked insane because he had a white shirt and it was like in the middle of that gap between those two things. Not eating that. Today we're in Kamakura, which is a little seaside town, loads of temples, loads of cool things. Now in the summer you could come here and then walk to Inoshima, which is a little island, but now in mid-October it gets dark too quickly, so we'll do today in Kamakura and then Inoshima walk will be another day. Also, I am actively avoiding cliche photos such as railways, trains, all that kind of stuff. I think it's overdone, you know? So better be original and find something original. So right here somewhere is a giant spider. I definitely wouldn't want to walk into that. You can't see it, and even like this you can't see it, but if I zoom in, can you see it now? Yeah. Guess this is where having 100 megapixels helps. So I've now been using this camera for a solid 4 or 5 days, and I think it's enough to start formulating some initial opinions. Let's start with battery life. Before I got this camera I was doing some research, and the general feedback was that the battery isn't the best, so the battery life. In my experience, I've managed to get a full day out of a single battery and only switched to the second battery when I was really using the camera and there was a lot going on. Now, there are some things you can do to increase battery life, such as switching the camera off between shooting. However, I wasn't switching the camera off, I was simply turning the screen off because that was a quicker way to wake up the camera as opposed to fully switching it off. And this neatly brings me onto the topic of my second immediate observation with the camera, and that is it takes a while for it to switch on. Sometimes it's quicker than other times, and other times it takes much longer. I would say in general it's taken between 3 to 5 seconds to switch on and be ready to use. And in some cases that has resulted in missed shots because the camera will be off, I'll see something happening and I'll react, but the camera is too slow. to switch on. There is a workaround that I have found, and that is you can assign a custom button to switch the screen off, and the screen only switches on using, if you just lightly press the shutter button, and the time to switch on is dramatically reduced to like a second. And I just set a very long, like 30-40 minute auto power off function, just in case I forget. Oh, it's really coming down now. Wow. There's the camera doing. It's staying mostly dry. Well, good morning from whatever day it is, I've lost count. Today we're leaving Tokyo and heading to Hiroshima. And finally, after what feels like 10 years of rain, the sun is finally out. We've got a few days of sun, which I'm very happy about, because one of the destinations is going to be an island, which would be a bit crap if it was raining all the time. Now let's get back to the camera, and the next thing I want to talk about is the overall build quality and just how the thing feels in your hand. No surprises there, it's solid. The build quality is second to none. It's definitely the best build quality in terms of camera that I've used, but this shouldn't be a surprise considering the price point. Currently walking around trying to find some food, but nothing opens till much later. And while I'm doing that, let me quickly talk about the ergonomics of this camera. Let's start with the grip. It's very big. I mean, the whole camera is really big, but the grip itself is quite substantial, which if you have big hands is going to be great. If you have hands like me, of a 10-year-old girl, you might find it a bit of a struggle to reach some buttons. But saying that, I've not exactly been struggling to use this camera. One thing I have been struggling with is the lack of joystick. You can use the screen as a digital touchpad, but it doesn't replace a physical joystick. If you've never used a camera with a joystick, you wouldn't know what I'm talking about, but if you've become accustomed to having the joystick, it's something that I think you will miss in this particular camera. Okay, that's enough chatting. We're now waiting for an okonomiyaki, yes, a local food place to open. This is a really nice scene that I've just found, this little corner. Got some nice light coming in from that side. You have a red building, well, a red part of the building, a white one and a green one. And overall, it's a pretty nice composition. And all I need is a subject just to be right there where that light is. Ideally, I'd like an old taxi, especially a white one will really work here. But there's not much coming from that direction, so I might have to be a bit patient. Another option is to have a cyclist or something like that coming through. Now you can have a person walking across, but because the scene's already quite busy, it might just get lost within all the details. So you want like a giant blob of color or negative space type of subject, if that makes sense. Well, a very good morning from Hiroshima. It's a wonderful day. I can't believe how sunny and warm it is. I have a feeling it's the last day of summer. That's what it feels like anyway. So I want to quickly talk about file sizes. So the camera comes with a terabyte SSD, which is very useful. And there's also a CF Express card slot, which is very useful. So you can back up the photos at the same time, even though the SSD is going to be more than enough for most people. And the terabyte space is useful because the file sizes are substantial. Around 200 megabytes of photo is not to be sniffed at. And this is one thing I always say to people when you're buying these high-end cameras. You're not just buying a camera, you're buying into the whole system and into the whole workflow of that camera. So for example, with these files, you're not going to be editing them on an old laptop that was fine with your APS-C JPEG files, for example. You'll need a more powerful laptop. You'll need more storage. You'll need faster Thunderbolt cables. So whenever you're looking to buy high-end cameras, whether it's this brand or any other brand, whether it's photo or video especially, keep in mind that there's a lot more that comes with it, or there's a lot more to it than just, oh, I'll buy a bigger camera. Now you have to think about hard drives and storage and data transfer. And if you use the CF Express card, you'll need to think about CF card reader. Or if you just want to connect this camera to your computer, a normal USB cable just wouldn't do the job. You'll need a Thunderbolt cable, which costs more money. So it's a whole package that you need to think about. It's something that trips many people up. There are two essentials when you're in Japan. A smoothie like this that you buy frozen, scan it, and then it blends it. And this thing here, the creme brulee ice cream. I've been looking for this for so long. Gold. This is where I feel this camera shines the most. It's when you're exploring places like this that are very quiet, where you don't have to rush, you don't have to react to things happening all the time, and you can just take your time, focus, find compositions, and this is where this camera shines. In environments which are fast-paced, there's loads going on, you need to react quickly, you need to switch it on quickly, you need to focus quickly. That's where I feel the camera can be slow, because it's fundamentally not designed for that. It's designed for taking your time and doing things properly, let's just say. In front of me is a giant red pot. However, this is not the subject. It's not particularly interesting, but what is interesting is the guy behind me who's got a red flag, and it matched with this red pot quite nicely. So right in front of me is a very nice clean wall with some details above, and obviously the zebra crossing here. What I'm trying to do is get someone in the middle of that, which I've already done, but a more difficult shot is to get a really old motorbike driving through and freeze it using a slower shutter speed right in the middle. I've been here for a fair bit, and so far I haven't got anything that's good. But I will give it a bit more time. I think there's some bikes coming, shooting at 1/60th of a second, and the camera's using like f8, f11. Happy days, waiting does pay off. Well, a very early good morning from Hiroshima. Today we're walking to the Peace Park ferry port, where we're taking a boat over to Miyajima, a little island just off the mainland. There's two ways to get there. You can take the main boat, but you need to take a train slightly out of town, or you can take the smaller boat, which goes right from the city centre, which is exactly what we're going to be doing now. So right in front of me you see a very touristy location with hundreds, if not thousands, of people. It's midday, the light's harsh, and let's just say we're not going to get a great shot here. However, I need to walk away with a photo because I'm not coming back here and I don't have time to wait until golden hour or until sunrise. So I will borrow my mum's sunglasses, which have this very nice yellow tint, and I will simply put the sunglasses in front of the camera and use the various imperfections and reflections to create something a bit more abstract and take the attention away from the fact that there's thousands of people and it's midday. And by standing here for a bit, trying different compositions, different angles of these glasses, you can get some pretty interesting results, which, considering the circumstances right now, are better than just a standard bang-on photo. This is a typical example of focusing and recomposing. The camera is now in manual focus, but the back button focus still works. It's pre-focused on the back, on the subject, and now I can just move it around and get something a bit more interesting. As always, when you're traveling, the best things are found by accident. Just had the best noodles, which I didn't film because I was too busy eating. And now we've got this amazing view we found completely by accident. Well, this feels like a suitable place to close the video off, and let me summarize this camera. I've been thinking about it since I started using it, how to best summarize it, because it's a unusual camera. It's a camera I've never used, and some opinions that I had on it when I started using it have changed and others have developed. So overall, I would say that this camera is aimed at two specific groups of people. The first group are commercial photographers, landscape photographers, still life photographers, anyone who's going to potentially be printing big, anyone who needs the best color depth, the biggest and the best raw files, and anyone who is comfortable or is okay with a slower system, both in terms of booting up, in terms of taking the photo, in terms of autofocus, and all of those things. The other group of people for whom this camera is going to be great for are hobbyists, but hobbyists with very deep pockets. If you have a lot of disposable income and you just want to get the best camera possible, or one of the best cameras possible, then this is for you. You know, you're definitely not going to find too many things to complain about, especially with how this camera feels in your hand. For most people though, I'll be honest, it's very hard to justify this kind of money on a camera which has such a specific use case. Most people don't need 100 megapixels. Most people would rather have a very snappy autofocus and a camera that switches on very quickly. Most people are not going to care too much about having the most premium feeling materials. Most people would rather have something that's more affordable. So this camera is impossible for me to recommend to 99% of people. Instead, I'm going to just say that if you're in that 1%, you probably don't need my opinion to convince you whether you need this camera or not. Well, that's everything I wanted to say about this camera. Of course, I need more time to give you a more in-depth review and thoughts on this camera. I can't do that after just a week or two of use. So that will be saved for the blog, which should be out at some point early next year. By then I would have used this camera enough. If you have any questions, comments, please leave them down below, especially if you have any questions on using this camera, living with this camera, or anything about this camera. Please write as many of them as possible in the blog, in the comments. I might not be able to get back to you straight away, but I'll certainly look at answering them in the upcoming blogs on this camera. So thank you so much again, and I'll see you in the next video. Now I'm going to go back to Hiroshima, which is over there somewhere, and to Kyoto tomorrow to carry on this trip. All right, thank you again, and I'll see you soon. Bye.